Class 6 is going to get into working with other people, right? And collaborating. So this is really more focused on collaboration with other people. And so we'll focus on working with programmers, working with musicians, producing vocalists. And so this is really about recording other people, right? Or producing other people. And this is like the thing where you really, it's a combination of being a psychologist and a music producer, right? Being everything, whatever is needed to get what you need out of it. And this is really about understanding personalities and people and who they are, what they like, what they connect with, what they respond to. Okay. There are some people who kind of need to be kind of, egged along. Like you kind of have to be on them all the time to get them to do what they do. Right. And they may do amazing work, but you really have to be on top of them all the time. Otherwise, their attention will drift and they'll just focus off and things will drag on forever. And there are some people you give them something and they'll just go at it 1,000 miles an hour. Right. And you just kind of you feed it to them, you let them do it, and then you go. Right. Sometimes people need to be refocused, right? One of the major jobs of being a producer and producing well is really creating the visual, the vision for what you're going for, right? With the person that you're recording, right? If you're recording a musician and they're a guitar player and you want a certain amount of creative feedback, you don't want to overfeed them, right? Because you want them to input their ideas. You're hiring them for a reason, right? Maybe they're a really good funk guitarist, right? And you may have an idea. It's like I'm looking for, like a certain thing, that, like this certain sound, and you pick out a particular funk, guitarist, right? And it's like, something like this along these lines. That's what I'm thinking, right? You give them a basic idea of what you're going for, and then they start putting something together and they put their own ideas in. But you need to make sure that your vision is kind of maintained with that. They may have some really cool stuff or really cool ideas, but if it's too much, then it doesn't serve the role. Remember, every part and everything plays a role in the production, right? One of the most important, one of the biggest mistakes or one of the biggest problems with creating music first productions is that if there's no vocal in the production, usually the music is overproduced, almost always, because there is no melody and lyric and vocal. Then naturally, in order for the production to sound interesting, there's going to be something there that you're going to want to focus your attention on. But when you actually go to put the vocals in, you have to strip back some of that production in order to find a place where the vocal fits in. And that may mean stripping down parts, simplifying parts, eliminating parts, finding it so that the attention is not on the music, but the attention is on the vocal. So the vocalist, if the vocal is the primary focus of the song, which in most songs it is, then there at least has to be some demo of what the lyric is going to be so that if the guitar player is there and they're playing and it's like they hear the vocals, it's like you can tell them you're stepping on the vocal. You can't do that. You're stepping on this part. You're stepping on that. You're playing too much. Lay back, right? And really good producers really understand that every part has a certain role and a place in the production, right? There's a big difference between somebody who's a great musician and somebody who's a great studio musician. A great studio musician really understands their place in the production and they realize that their part is not going to be the only part in the production or the primary focus necessarily of the production. And there may be many other parts or elements that are going to be added in later that they are not hearing. And they understand how to play to fulfill their role. Bass players are, and that's a classic, it's an excellent example, Adrian. Bass players, it's probably the most frustrating thing. Bass players, most of the time, it's like really boring. It's like really running through the chord changes. And the role and the art of that is finding the good pocket with the drummer, right? That place with the drummer, right? Where it serves its role in an incredibly valuable role in terms of creating the foundation for the rest of the production to be built off of. The most difficult thing is getting a guitar player to not overplay, right? The natural tendency of a guitar player is that the guitar player, wants to be out front, right? And in front. And guitar players always play ahead of the beat. It's amazing. Almost always, right? Really good studio musicians really understand the pocket, of guitar. And it's like, what is the role, right? Maybe the guitars are really driving the song. And if that's the case, then they do need to be ahead in order to sound up front. It's really interesting. It's really simple. If you break it down to pure engineering, the sound that hits you first will sound closest to you, right? And so in mixing and in music production in particular, the way that you create the stage, the sound stage, the depth is that if the guitars are slightly ahead, maybe even 10 or 15 milliseconds ahead of the drums and the guitar, they will sound up front in the speakers closer to you than the drums and the bass. But if you want that guitar to sit back and be a part of the rhythm section with the bass and the drums, then it needs to fit in a pocket where it's either at the same timing or slightly behind where the bass and the drums are in terms of its physical positioning, right? And these are things that really good players understand, right? And that's where you have to define the role of each part, because then you know how to produce it, right? What is it role? This role is meant to carry the focus. Like if you're like recording a saxophone and the saxophone is doing like ad libs, and those ad libs are meant to carry the person's attention from one lyric to the next, because maybe the lyric sings and then there's like a couple of bars of empty space and you need something in that space to carry your attention to the next part, right? It can't be overactive. It has to be suitable. It has to fill in. It has to really draw your attention. It has to land you right on the next vocal line, right? And so your focus is in making sure that the musician in their ad-libbing doesn't overplay, right? That they fill in that role just perfectly so that the attention always stays on the vocal. That's the primary thing. And what that person is doing is just taking you to the next lyric. They're setting you up for what the next phrase is, what the next part of the story is. So critical, right? And producing vocals, right? How do you get the energy out of a performance, right? How do you get the performer to really give you everything that you need, right, out of their production, right? How do you really pull their focus and energy in, right, and their attitude? That's really what people respond to. One of the classic mistakes of working and producing vocals is that people focus too much on pitch, right? They focus too much on pitch, and it's not like you want the pitch to be really sloppy and all over the place, but you can fix that. You can work with that, right? You can work with the timing if it's slightly off. What you really want is the feeling, the vibe, and the attitude, right? You really want to feel that it's exciting, right? It really has to draw your attention, right, in a way. And it can't be all attitude all the time, right? There has to be a setup. You have to pick spots, right? We talk about this. I'm going to talk about this a lot with the shape of the music production. There are always moments in the song, right? Just like a movie, right? The movie, if you have a movie that is just like it starts and it's nonstop like action scenes and people blowing each other up, an hour and a half later you're just numb and it's like, what the hell just happened? I wasted an hour and a half of my life. But if there's a story, right, and the story develops and you have moments where things are like really quiet, nothing's going on, and then all of a sudden, a car comes crashing through your bedroom, and then there's like this whole chase scene and everything, and it's like you set it up, right? You set it up for that moment, and then it's really exciting. It's like, wow, all this stuff happened, right? And then it settles down again, right? And you take a breather, right? And then the story carries on, and then when the next thing happens, it's more meaningful, right? It's very easy when you find something that's really cool to overuse it, right? And the real key when you listen to great music, it tells a story, but it carries you on a journey. It draws your attention. It sets you up for those moments that make them exciting, right? And you only got your 4 minutes to do it, right? So that's really critical. And so the way that you produce vocals is really critical. And editing, right? And pitch correction, how you help to shape those performances, right? And not overdo it, right? Not overdo it. Sometimes the pitch correction thing, you could do it, like a T-Pain effect, Cher effect, or whatever, where you get the real auto-tune thing. That is an effect and a real important part of the song. And that's a real valid production technique. Maybe overused, but it serves a role and a purpose that may work depending upon what the song is about, right? So that's kind of the thing. Now, I put this section in the biz of music production here is the negotiating rates and how you set your rates and how you negotiate rates for engineers, for other people that would be doing work, hiring musicians and all those sorts of things. And we're going to talk a bit about that, and particularly about like setting your own rates and how you value yourself. This is such an important and misunderstood thing, right? because it's a very saturated market of people trying to do this. Your your ability to charge is based off of your ability to create product. I hate to use the word like product, like we're making widgets or something, but you're creating music that people are interested, that's selling, that becomes valuable. And when that happens, then you become valuable, right? That's the only way. So it doesn't matter how good your work is if people aren't buying it, if it's not getting out there, if people aren't buying it, then your value as a music producer is based on the measure of your success. So, and that's the important understanding where you fit on that scale and then how you build that. It's sort of a catch 22. You may be very talented. And one of the things about being, say, like an engineer or a producer is that, it's hard to get that really great gig with a really big artist if you don't have a track record of success, right? So you start up by working with smaller people for less money, and then as you start to build successful records and successful careers and really cool records, then an artist comes back and says, "Man, we really dig what you do." There and now all of a sudden you're working on a project that the budget is twice what you've ever worked with before, right? And yeah, okay, so Harold has a thing here. It's a saying in Austria. It's like there's something that's cheap has no worth. Right, all right. Or the other, um, you pay peanuts, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. I think that's what the other the saying is, and that's just really, like uh, it works both ways, right? And you may be incredibly valuable, you may have incredible skills, but if there's no track record, if you don't have things that you can show people that have been successful, then it's hard for you to really validate what you charge. Anyway, that's the basic starting point, and there are many aspects of this which we'll get into, but really important because I think people want to make a career at the industry, and most of that is about being patient and really finding your place. When you have more people calling you than you have time, then you raise your rates. When the phone is not ringing and you have very little work, you lower your rates, right? And you just kind of go with the market, you go with the flow. That's the basic way that it works. All right, and that's class 6.